Hey everyone, this is Elathera with an instructional video that's going to take you through how to make your very own 3D paper art shadow box. Before we begin, there's a couple different things that you need to have on hand so we can do this craft together. First of all, you're going to need some glue. So any kind of glue will work. I choose to use school glue. It seems to do the job for me. The only thing I would recommend is to stay away from what's labeled as a craft glue, specifically ones for scrapbooking, as they tend not to stick as well. You're also going to need something to spread your glue with and a container to keep it in. I have a little plastic tray that I've been using, and the plastic tray is just something that was left over from something I bought. So I keep my glue inside this so it doesn't make a mess anywhere. And then to spread it, I have two different tools that I use. One is just a toothpick. The toothpick is used for finer details and it works well for smoothing in small areas. If you want to use something that's a little bit bigger, you can use just like a strip of cardboard like this. It's a lot wider than the toothpick, so you're going to be able to cover more area as you spread your glue. Also, you may find it helpful to have a pair of scissors on hand in case there's any little snips or things that you need to put on your design. And last but not least, you may find if you're having difficulty working with some of the smaller pieces, to try using a pair of needle nose tweezers to help you pick them up and place them where you want them. So let's go ahead and get started. By the time you're done, you're gonna have something that looks like this. What we're first gonna do is take the pieces out of our bag, and I'll show you how it's going to look fully assembled before we start gluing the pieces together. So go ahead and take all the contents out of your bag. Some of the pieces are extremely tiny, so make sure that you've got everything and that nothing has fallen on the floor. You want to keep an eye out especially for this super tiny white piece. It's actually the paws for Angel, and it's very hard to see, so keep an eye out for it. Right now I'm sorting them all by color, so it'll be a little bit easier to make sure that you have all the components that you're looking for. And I'm going to set the background aside as we don't need that until the very end. So you should have two light green shrubs, the green grass background. Angel has 4 white pieces. Fluttershy has 5 yellow pieces. And there are 2 trees with 2 tree trunks. And for Fluttershy's mane, as well as her tail, she has a total of 6 pieces. Let's start with how the background will look first. The grass will be laid out where the shortest end is going to be towards the right. We then have our 2 bushes, which will be positioned behind the grass. And our 2 trees. The shorter tree trunk belongs to the tree with more leaves. And you'll see that there's a cutout portion of this tree. We will be gluing the tree trunk into the slits. So it'll look like the branches disappear into all the leaves. And the other tree, we can position the trunk on top. So you're seeing some of the branches. Next, let's go into how Fluttershy will look. This is Fluttershy's main body. And she also has this really odd shaped piece, which is actually her back leg and her back hoof combined together, which is going to go under her body. Her front paw is going to come out, the front hoof, over her body. She has one large wing that will go behind, so it looks like that she's flying. And she has a smaller wing that we're going to add on top of her front wing. Lastly, we have her other hoof, which is going to come out of her body, and it's going to cross over with the other one, so it looks like she's hugging. For her tail, it's made of 2 pieces. The main piece and this other shaped piece, which has lines at the ends. And we will be layering the smaller piece on top to make it look more 3D. Her mane is going to be positioned behind her head, the portion that hooks around her ear. And her mane on the left side is going to have its own piece layered on top of it, again with dashed lines. So just match up the shape. And the 2 smaller pieces, the same thing. All these dotted lines are folding tabs, so we will be folding them over and gluing them on the back side. They'll be a little bit bigger than the cutout piece that we have in her mane, and that's so it'll make it pop out. It'll curve out. Now Angel is going to be positioned between her paws. I'll do it right here so you can see. Angel's 2 super teeny tiny front paws will go on just below his head. And the 2 ears will go behind his body. They'll be positioned in such a way that it looks like they're somewhat perky but also annoyed at the same time, which is the look that he tends to have at all times. Now we're ready to start gluing, bending, folding, and adding depth to all of the pieces. And we're first going to start with the background, as there's a lot of gluing that needs to be done there, and it's some of the easier pieces to work with. So I want to start off with making the trees. You want to glue your trunk down to your tree on the right side. You can just spread a little bit of glue on the back. Doesn't have to be a lot. And once you have it positioned, just go ahead and press down and make sure that you have it secured. For our other tree, if you haven't done so already, you can use your fingers to bend the front and back side away from one another so that you can slide in your tree trunk. And then flip it over to the back, and you're going to add glue where the brown trunk joins the tree at the 5 little teeny tiny points. So because the pieces are so small, you may find it easier to use your toothpick to put a little dab behind on each of them. It's okay if it's a little messy in this part because nobody's going to see the back. We then want to take the first tree and glue it onto the grass. What you want to do is line up the sides so that it's a continuous straight line from that very bottom piece of the grass up to your tree. I'm going to use my background to make sure that I'm lining these up. I've put the tree down about halfway in the grass, between the bottom of the grass and the top of the grass. And then our other tree, we can glue on top of our bush. You want it down most of the way. So we're going to set these pieces aside to dry, and we'll come back to them again later. Next, let's work on Angel. Angel is super tiny and presents some challenges because of that. We're going to glue his 2 ears together first. So there's a little tab at the very end. We're just going to stack them on top of one another, but at different angles. You want the smaller ear on top. So go ahead and glue those 2 pieces together. Now we're going to place his paws on his body. And because of how tiny they are, this is one of the more difficult pieces to work with. You want it so that the long edge of his body is towards the left side of the box. So this is the longer edge. And we're going to place his paws right about here, right below his head. We don't want them to completely be sitting on top of his body. We want the paws to come out a little bit, so it'll be half on and half off. So you may find it easier to work with some needle-nosed tweezers to help position them. We'll put a dab of glue on the tip of his paws. And then place them halfway on, halfway off his body. Make sure you're pressing down so that you know you've got them secured. And then put the ears behind Angel's head. So they're going to be on the opposite side from where you put the paws. You just want to put a dab of glue on the ears and then place them behind his head. Next, we're going to work on Fluttershy's mane and tail and then attach them to her body. So let's start with her tail first. Her tail has two pieces. What we're going to do is we're going to take the tab on the bottom and we're going to bend that and fold it underneath. And then we're going to line it up with the slit that's in the bottom of her tail. And then we're going to glue that together. So I'm flipping it over to the back side. And gluing down the tab. You can see that the two pieces are not situated together at the top, and that's just what we want. And we will come back to this once the glue has had a chance to dry. Let's go ahead and get her mane done. For her mane, go ahead and start with the top two pieces and only glue one side down. I would recommend starting with the top of the two pieces on her mane. So fold the tops under. Position them onto her mane and then glue them down. Make sure that you're pressing and holding them into place to let the glue dry. And do the same thing with the other tab. You'll need to take a moment to hold these into place. And again, with the very last piece of her hair, do the same thing again. Start with the top, fold the tabs down, glue it down to her mane. Now we're gonna set her mane aside and let that dry and come back to her tail. For the very top piece, you see that it has a slit in it. We're going to fold the tab up. And then we are going to glue it the very end of her tail. Now you can see how the top piece is going to line into position with the rest of her. And with the way that the light hits it, it's creating a shadow underneath, so it looks like there's depth to her tail. We're going to repeat the same exercise on the top of her head. So you'll fold each of the tabs down, put them into position in the little slots, glue on the back side. And because the pieces are longer than her actual mane, they're going to curl outward. You may find it easier as you're putting these into position to actually fold them or bend them a little bit first. So for example, I'm going to take this piece, which is flat right now, and just curl it a little bit around my finger to give it an arc. Then I've bent the tab down, put it into position. Now I'm going to glue on the back side. There's going to be more pressure on the paper gluing your second tab down in each of these sets, so make sure that you're holding it in place to give it adequate time for the glue to dry. So now you can see that it's popping out. Go ahead and do the same thing with your remaining tabs. Fold them a little bit at first to help give it the shape you're looking for. Line up the tabs. Glue it on the back side. And then hold into place while the glue dries. Again, if you're finding it hard to work with some of the smaller pieces, you can use some tweezers to help. And do your very last piece. If the angles feel a little awkward to you, it's because we're forcing the paper to scrunch itself up. That's why you feel a little more pressure when you're putting the second piece or the second tab on. So that's her mane and tail. We'll come back later to do some folding on it and some bending to make it look a little more angular. But let's go ahead over to Fluttershy's body. The first thing we want to do is glue her front paw on. It's gonna be below her neck, maybe 1/8 of an inch. And halfway between the left and right side of her body. What we're going to do is we're going to glue the very end of her hoof to her body. That way we can have the rest of it stand out or be bent away from her body to make it look like it's closer to you and further away from her. So before we put any glue on it, let's go ahead and take the very end of her hoof. I have it pinched between my 2 fingers. I'm just going to gently bend the paper up. And you'll see now that it looks like it's coming away from her body. Once you've bent it, go ahead and place some glue in the back. And position it on her body. We're going to do the same technique for her smaller wing. So hold on to the very tip of it. Use your finger to gently bend up. And then we'll be applying it so it sits right on top of her other wing. Where these pieces join to the body is probably going to be hidden by her hair. So don't worry if you feel like yours doesn't look as clean as you want it to. Alright, the next step we're going to do is some bending and folding of our pieces before we start adding our foam adhesives to space them out and create some more depth. So let's start with her mane and tail. On her tail, if you want to make it look like the front is popping out more than the rest, you can always bend it with your fingers. So I'm bending it towards the top to make that look like it's standing out a little bit further. And the entire piece we can make look like it's curling too. So for example, at the bottom here, it looks like it should be arced such that the left side is actually further away from you. So if we gently bend the paper around our finger, bend it a little more, the very tip, almost like you're curling it around your finger, it's going to look like it's going behind. You can also do the same kind of thing with her main section of her tail. So I'm curling this again, arcing it towards the camera. Now we can do the same kind of thing with her mane. So again, we have these 2 tips that seem to curl back behind. So use your fingers to bend the paper. If it's a smaller piece and you find it difficult to bend with your fingers, you can just pinch one little section at a time and just keep repeating that motion over the same area. Same thing with her right side as well. So we're going to angle it at the very top so it looks like it's going back. And then let's change direction so that the bottom half is coming towards you. So the top is going back, and the front is coming towards you. And again, the very tip is going to be curled behind. This is going to make her hair look like it's wavy. Next, let's take Fluttershy's body and start folding some of her pieces out. So we want her wings to come towards you just by bending the tips of them. So go ahead and pinch your fingers on the very edges. And do the same thing with her back wing. So you're bending just the tips out towards the front. For her other wing, we're going to bend the tips back. So fold them the other direction. Let's also make her hooves pop out. So her front hoof here has a little slit at the joint. So we can bend the very bottom of her hoof forward more and let the back part of her hoof closer to her body stay further back. For her bottom leg, there's again a little slit, and that's going to allow us to bring her leg out away from her body. So just get some leverage using your fingers to pop her leg forward. We can do the same thing with her neck. So we want her head to look like it's popped out closer to us. So if we angle her head forward and bend or pinch down the edges right at her neck, it's going to look like she's turning her head towards us. You can also pop out her nose, maybe fold down the bottom of her chin, or even the entire top of her head, angling that down so that she looks less flat and more three-dimensional. I'm also bending the hooves, angling them to make them look more 3D as well. Any sort of adjustments you think make it look more three-dimensional and less flat, you can do and embellish. So you can see now that it's catching the light a little bit differently on the edges. We're also going to fold back Angel's ears. So I'm curving them a little bit and angling them back. Let's also take the other 2 feet from Fluttershy, and we're going to bend the top portion forward like it's coming out away from her body, because this is the arm that's going to wrap around Angel. I'm going to angle her foot back a bit. And again, curve it so that it looks three-dimensional. Then we're going to glue Angel so that Fluttershy is holding him. And we're going to position it so that her arm is around his body. We're going to have it so that Angel's paws are just peeking out on the top. And basically we're going to glue it on the back side so that you just see his paws and his feet coming out. So go ahead and glue Angel to Fluttershy's hoof. And while we wait for that to dry, we're going to get into one of the last pieces of putting this together, which is using our little foam spacers or foam adhesives to add layers and depth between the different pieces. So the foam spacers come on a little sheet like this, and I have found the easiest way to work with them, if you're working with one at a time, is to use your finger as support behind it to help pop out one spacer. So you peel it and there's stickiness on the back side, but you still have the covering on the front. So I've peeled one off, go ahead and do that. We're going to place this one on her back wing. So you just want to set it on the very end. And when working with any of these, you want to press down for a few seconds to make sure that it's adhering to the paper. Once it's secure, you can peel the other backing off of the front side. And then we're going to position it behind Fluttershy's body such that it overlaps with where her other wing is. And then again, you want to press firmly to make sure that it adheres. We're going to do the same exercise to attach her tail. So we're going to put one dot on the very end, and we're going to do the same thing again to attach her other hooves to her body, and we're going to use 2 spacers side by side. So go ahead and peel another spacer, place it on the tail, press and hold for a few seconds. Then peel off the backing, place it behind Fluttershy's body, and it's going to sit lower than her foot. Press and hold it. And do the same thing with the final piece. And this time, 2 spacers will be used side by side. We're using 2 spacers to add some additional support. And don't forget to press and hold them firmly in place. All of the spacers that we're using are hidden behind other pieces, so you won't be able to see them. You want to angle this other piece so that it looks like Fluttershy is holding Angel, and that her head is very close to Angel's head. So find a position that you like, and then you're going to press and hold the pieces together. You may find that you'll need to do some additional adjustments to make her front leg appear that it's popping out further than her back leg. So you can push her front leg forward again and move her back leg back. The last piece we're going to do is attach her mane onto her head. So you're going to position it behind her ear and basically glue the little strip that is behind her ear. And it should slide right in. So you can see now how her mane covers where we had her wing and her front hoof join. We're going to take this lock and put it behind Angel. We don't want to cover him up with her hair. We're going to add a little bit of glue so that where her hair joins her head, that there's no seam there. And now Fluttershy is all done. So let's go ahead and put our background together while she's drying. So the background has to fit inside of our shadow box. And our shadow box actually has a little bit of an edge to it on each side. So get your scissors, and what we are going to do is we're going to cut a little bit off of our grass here, because right now it's the same width as the box. With how far I've positioned it away from the bottom and right edges, That's about the amount of distance that we want. So we're going to trim the extra off on the left side. If you want to measure it and use pen or pencil to draw it out, feel free to do so. Reposition it, see if that's the amount of distance that makes sense. If we do need to make some minor adjustments, we can do that at the very end. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are going to position the grass so that it's in the foreground, followed by the bushes, and then just the sky. We're going to use 2 spacers stacked on top of each other for the grass and behind the trees. So we're going to put 2 spacers on the left side, in the middle, and underneath the tree on the right. Then we're going to have 2 spacers behind the tree here and behind your other tree. We'll do those first and then we'll come back to the bushes. So in order to have 2 pieces stack on top of each other, you can peel the backing off of the first piece and then peel the other piece out like you would normally. Then place it on top of the other one and press and hold them together. That's going to give you 2 spacers width. Go ahead and do the same thing 4 more times. Then you're going to peel a stack out. Let's get your stacks of 2 ready. Put 1 on each side. Don't forget to press and hold them in place. 1 in the middle. And 1 behind each tree. We're also going to place 1 spacer between this bush and the grass. We'll flip it over so you can see how it's going to look once we have that placed. Basically, we want to cover the tree trunk so we don't see where that joins. So we can add our spacer approximately right here, just 1. Go ahead and peel the backing off the main section of your background. So we're going to place the largest piece into position first. And line it up so that we have a little bit of space between the edges and your background, just like we showed before. Then press and hold on each piece where you put the spacers. Now peel the backing off of your other tree. So I have one piece on the front and one piece on the back. Let's go ahead and slide it underneath your grass. Press and hold that. And then do the same thing with the top of the tree. For our last bush, we're going to line that up underneath. And it looks like my dots are in the way. So let's make an adjustment. We're going to gently coax these two apart. There we go. So that we can slide our bush underneath. And this one we're going to let rest just on the background. So go ahead and press that back into place. And to make it stand out at the top, let's add one dot right here. I'm pressing and holding it into place. Then I'm going to peel off the backing. And then press and hold once again. So now we have our background. If you choose, you can embellish on the trees by folding out their branches or their leaves. So for example, I'm popping some of these forward. Any sort of 3D elements you want to add, you can certainly do so. And you could choose to do the same thing with the bushes as well. Now Fluttershy is going to be positioned slightly right of the center. She has a lot of volume to her. What we're going to do is we're going to place 4 dots stacked one on top of another behind her head. And then we're going to stack 2 dots behind her wing. So this should use all the dots that you have on your little sheet. If for some reason you need additional dots, you can just cut away between the circles, as everything is adhesive, and make your own. Doesn't matter what shape they are, as long as you can hide them behind what you're working on. So right now I've made 3 stacks of 2. Now I'm going to combine one of the stacks of 2 with another stack to make a stack of 4. So I have a stack of 2. I'm going to place that on her wing. And then I want to press those 2 down. So I don't want to squish her mane. So I've lifted that out of the way while I'm pressing down. And we're going to put the stack of 4 behind her head. And again, press down. And I'll do a brief example if you ran out of dots. So I'm just going to cut 4 pieces. And we're going to set those on top of each other and use this for support for her head. If you feel that any of the pieces that you've assembled are going to need some extra support once they're put in their frame, you can use the same technique. So I peeled the backing off the sides, placing 2 of these together. Repeating the same exercise with another 2. And then combining all 4 together. So now we have a very thick stack of 4 pieces. I'm just going to stick this right next to our other dots. Okay, so let's go ahead and peel the backing off of these.